In this video, we will show you how to replace your radiator on this Ford Fusion. This will be located along the front of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to drain the cooling system. With that said, go ahead and open up the cap. While doing so, open it up and away from your face. Have a quick look, make sure the seal is still in good condition, and rest this along the top. At this point, let's safely make our way underneath the driver's side front of the vehicle. Now underneath the front of the vehicle, we're going to continue on with removing this plate that makes its way all the way across. You'll find it's held in place with several 7mm headed mounting bolts, and it will also have a few push clips that make their way across as well. Let's start with the 7mm mounting bolts. With all those broken free, we'll continue on to those push clips. For the push clips, you'd want to use a trim tool or small prying device. Start pulling out the center. That'll unlock the push clips, and then you should be able to remove the outer portion. Just go ahead and give that a quick inspection and set it aside. If the two pieces came apart, you can slide them together. Just leave it in the unlocked position. Make sure you're holding onto the plate as you remove the final one. Slide the plate out of place and set it aside. Now that we have the shield out of the way, let's continue on with a trim tool or prying device. We're looking along this area. You can see that we have our transmission cooler lines, and those go below the fan assembly. Use your prying device and make your way in between this area, gently separating it, being careful not to damage anything. Continue on to the mounting points that hold your lower radiator hose to the fan shroud. There's one over here. There we are. Now we can make our way over towards the passenger side. Make our way over here. Sometimes the lines just pop out of the brackets, but either way, the brackets do need to be transferred over to the brand new fan assembly. Let's continue on to dislodging this area. You're going to find that you have a metal bracket that holds onto the fan shroud assembly. Go ahead and pry this out of the way. We're being careful not to damage our rubber hose. You can use a prying device, an angled pick, whatever you might happen to have. Just try to make your way underneath these ears and gently separate them. Now that we have this separated, the next thing we'll do is put a collection receptacle underneath the driver's side front. Looking up along the driver's side lower corner of the radiator is where you're going to find the drain for your cooling system. There should be a little knob on the back here that you can just go ahead and twist counterclockwise and start draining out the coolant into your collection receptacle so you can recycle it properly. Now once you feel as though it is fully drained, continue on to closing that drain and then make your way over towards the passenger side. We can start dislodging the lower radiator hose from the radiator. This will have a clamp that you will have to squeeze. Once you've squeezed that, you can continue on to sliding it out of the way and removing the hose from the radiator. We'll make sure we have our collection bucket under this area because there is the possibility there may be coolant here. Now we can start sliding the lower radiator hose off of the radiator. If you find that it's stuck in place, you could try using an angled hose pick. Make your way in between and break it free. You could also continue on with a small prying device and gently start pulling it out of place. This one's sliding off pretty easily. Once again, there could be coolant in this area. Let's make our way looking up inside this area. We're looking for the fan control module. This has an electrical connector along the bottom. To unlock it, go ahead and squeeze on both sides. Give it a little wiggle and pull it down and out of place. Give each end a quick inspection for corrosion and set the wiring harness aside. Next, you can move directly above it to the next wiring harness. For this one, it does have a lock in the center. Squeeze that in, we'll give this a little wiggle. Quick inspection, set the wiring aside. Let's make our way back up into the engine compartment. We're looking for the wiring harness that comes all the way across the front. Starting over on the driver's side, let's continue with this electrical connector. Use a small pick or small screwdriver to dislodge the little lock. A quick inspection. Now we'll continue on with a trim tool or a small prying device. There will be several areas that we will have to pry out of place. We'll get the last one down over here. It's right about this area. I'm just going to switch up my pry bar a little longer here. There we are. Now let's make our way down inside this area. We're looking for the fan control module. We've already disconnected the electrical connector, but along the top of it, there's a T25 Torx screw that we will have to remove. The screw out of here. There's my bolt. This module out of here. When you do this, typically you just tip it, and then you can slide it up and out. We'll just give this a quick inspection and set it aside. Now just above that area, we have an electrical connector that we will have to dislodge from the fan assembly. Go ahead and pry that out of place. Ours is pretty much broken. Let's use a pry bar, make my way in between. At this point, we can start dislodging the fan assembly. Along each side, you will find that you have a locking tab. The one that's over on the driver's side is easier to see. You can go ahead and depress on that tab, and once you've done so, you should be able to start lifting up on the fan assembly. Now that I have this side broken free, I'm going to continue on and do the same thing over on the passenger side. At this point, we can start lifting it up. You may find that it binds up on some hoses or cables. Just be careful not to damage anything along the way. And there it is, friend. Let's set this aside. Put a separate collection receptacle under this area so you can recycle this fluid properly. And now we can remove our two transmission cooler lines. Down along the bottom here, we'll be using our 16mm wrench. Now that we have that separated, let's continue following our way up the radiator. Let's get the upper transmission cooler line. Now we'll come up from there and disconnect this hose from the top of the radiator as well. Quick inspection. Set it aside. Over on the driver's side, we're going to remove the upper radiator hose. Just squeeze on that clamp, we can slide this out of place. Just give that hose a quick inspection. We'll set it aside. Just underneath that area, you're going to find that you have a power steering cooler hose, which is held in place with a push clip. Go ahead and make your way in between that area and separate it. Let's make our way to where this AC line is mounted. Use an 8mm to remove the mounting bolt. At this point, we should have plenty of slack from our AC lines. Take hold of the radiator and start pulling it rearward towards the engine. That will expose the AC condenser along the front of the radiator. Those two pieces should be held together with a locking clip along each side of the radiator. They should have a couple little tabs that you can squeeze together and then gently pry it apart. Ours pretty much just separated on its own when I went to pull it away, but it pretty much just looks like this. Now the next thing that we'll want to do after you have the upper portion separated on both sides is take hold of the AC condenser, lift it up, and pull the bottom away from the radiator. Along the bottom of the radiator, there should be two small hooks that the AC condenser will fit into. Once you have that separated, we can take hold of the radiator and pull it up and out of the vehicle, being extremely careful not to cause any damage to anything, especially the fins on the AC condenser. Let's make its way beyond here. Just have to wiggle this back and forth a little bit. And there it is, friend. With the radiator out of place, the next thing you want to do is pay attention to the two mounting points. Along the bottom corner on each side, you should have a rubber mount. Confirm that it's still located on the vehicle and not on the bottom of the radiator. Let's prepare to install our brand new radiator. Take this and carefully put it in position, paying close attention to all of the cooling fins on the radiator itself and on your AC condenser, which is located in front of the radiator. We'll take this and slide it into place, aligning it with the lower mounting points. Take your time with this, it's not a race. Now at this point, let's tip the radiator rearward towards the engine. We have to slide the lower portion of the AC condenser into the lower hooks of the radiator. Once we've done so, we'll continue on with pressing the upper portion of the AC condenser into the radiator. We do have those locking tabs. Once you have it in the hooks, we're going to continue on by rolling the top portion in. I find that it's a little bit easier to gain access down in this area if I just use a long pry bar. Of course, I'm going to continue being careful for all of the cooling fins on the AC condenser and that radiator. Just press these two together. There we are. Let's get this side pressed in over here. Double check to make sure those two are completely secured together. Let's move along to reinstalling our transmission cooler line. Slide that into place along the bottom of the radiator. 16 millimeter, make sure it's nice and tight. There's that one. We can continue on to the upper transmission cooler line, same thing. Just flex this to get it into the proper position. Once you have that started in, go ahead and snug it up. Let's make our way up here now. Press that hose as far onto there as possible. Over on the other side of the radiator, we're going to continue on by resecuring our power steering cooler line. Our particular adapter broke, so I'm going to hold this in place with a wire tie. You do want to make sure this is properly secured. Move along to the upper radiator hose. Slide that onto the radiator and reinstall the clamp. Let's try to get that back into its original position. Continue on with your plastic push pin, which holds the AC condenser to the radiator along the passenger side. Just make our way right down through here. You can also reach down along where the fan would be. That in there. Lock it in by pressing in the center. Double check to make sure both areas are secured together. Secure this clamp along here. Make our way up in this area. Make your way up along here. We're going to continue on by securing our AC line and the washer fluid fill tube. Flex everything as needed. Now it's time to resecure the top of the radiator. We have our locking clips. We'll be taking each of these clips, slide them onto the top locating tab on the radiator. Once you've done so, we'll be taking that clip, bringing it down and through this area. It's pretty much impossible to see, but it'll come behind and then make its way out and lock in the two ears along the bottom side there. A little locking clip on here. Now, before you go ahead and press this one all the way in, it's important to make sure you start the other one on as well. If you find that you're having a hard time pulling this through, you could carefully try to pry this forward, pressing each one of the locking clips through. Since I'm pressing up against plastic, I'll be using some wood. I'll use my pry bar and come directly up against the valve cover. I don't want to cause any damage. We do need to apply enough pressure that this does lock into position. I can see both of those ears protruding through. We'll just go ahead and try to press them back on through rearward, just to make sure that they are actually locked in position. Do the same on the other side of the vehicle. For this side, I'll be using the tray down along the bottom there. Let's try to press these through. Okay, let's prepare to install our fan assembly. Carefully take this and put it in position in the engine compartment, being extremely careful for the cooling fins on your radiator. We'll slowly work this back and forth as necessary, being extremely careful for any wiring as we continue. Carefully start working this in here. Just work it a little bit back and forth. Now, as we bring it down, on the radiator itself, it does have 4 hooks. There's 2 along each side that pretty much face up like this. We're going to be dropping the fan down along that area, sliding it into the clips along the bottom. As we come along the top, it does have those little locks. So once we press it down, we'll just confirm that it is properly locked in. Now we can continue on with our cable. You can see some of the mounting points up across the top. There is the one that's down in this area. We'll just carefully press that down into position. Make our way up along the top here. Got our wiring harness. Now we'll insert our control module. When we do so, we're going to take the bottom, slide it into place on the fan. After that, we'll continue on with our T25 Torx screw. When bringing this down, we'll make sure we have it in the proper positioning with the wiring harness area facing down. Once that mounting bolt is bottomed out, confirm that it's completely secured against the shroud. Now we can reconnect in our electrical connectors. We'll be doing the top one from up top here. We can do the bottom one once we're back down along the bottom of the vehicle. We'll just take this and press it into place. Typically it will be held up against the fan assembly itself. Just go ahead and line up those 2 connector pieces and press them in. Press it in, listen for a click. Once you have that connected, the next thing you're going to want to do is secure that wiring harness. Down along inside this area, there should be a small clip that you can slide that into. Ours is broken and missing. Go ahead and attach that with a wire tie. Now from underneath the vehicle, we're going to reconnect our fan module. We'll make our way down along the bottom, take that connector and slide it up into place. Press it in, listen for a click from both sides. We'll give it a light tug to make sure that's completely secure. Let's make our way over to the drain. We'll just double check to make sure this is completely tight. Let's make our way over to the far side of the radiator. We're going to reattach our radiator hose to the bottom of the radiator. Go ahead and put that in position and resecure your clamp. Make sure you slide it on there as far as possible so it's bottomed out against the radiator. We do not want any leaks from this area. Double check to make sure that's completely secured. Let's start resecuring the lower radiator hose to the bottom of the fan assembly. We'll just carefully take this and put it in place, slide it onto the fan. The next thing we'll do is continue on to resecuring the lines. The lines should have some plastic clips, which you would have the lines in, and then slide the plastic clips up into the fan assembly. Get that in there. Are. Let's continue on to the lower panel. Slide this into place. Once you feel as though you have it in place, you can continue on with your 4 push clips. The next thing we'll do is get ready to fill up our cooling system. Now over at the cooling reservoir is where you're going to do so. When filling it with the proper manufacturer specified coolant, you're going to continue filling it, and what we want to pay attention to is this cold fill line. It comes right across this area here. As you fill it, you will notice that air will burp its way up, you'll see a whole bunch of air bubbles, and coolant will make its way down. You can continue on by using a funnel to try adding fluid this way, or otherwise you could also apply suction with a specialty tool and then draw the coolant in which case you won't have air bubbles stuck inside of the system. I have my specialty tool. We'll just put this in place and create vacuum. At this point, I'm going to double check to make sure everything's seated properly by confirming that I do hold vacuum inside of the cooling system. If you are not creating vacuum to draw coolant into the cooling system, you could also try to use a pressure tester. Apply a little bit of coolant inside of the system, and then you'd want to apply pressure to make sure no coolant's making its way out of an area that it shouldn't. I'll watch this for approximately 1 minute, confirming that the needle does not drop into the yellow, or worse, into the red. Okay, it looks like it's still holding pressure here. I'm going to continue on by releasing the vacuum here. It's going to draw the coolant straight into the cooling reservoir. Now, since I don't want to overfill my container here, I'm just going to release that vacuum, remove my tool, confirm that we are at the cold fill line. At this point, the next thing that you will want to do is go ahead and start up the vehicle. Let it run and get up to normal operating temperature. Once it's reached normal operating temperature, the cooling fans should turn on. While this is all happening, you should be paying attention to the reservoir right along here and just keep topping off the fluid up to that fill line. Once you're sure you burped all the air out of the system, continue on with your reservoir cap. With all that said, go ahead and clean up your mess, check for leaks, close the hood, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.